Now let's bring you our first business story. The IMF wants government to press ahead with reforms to help fast-track the country's economic recovery. The fund believes that this is one of the surest ways to achieve the needed turnaround of the economy for Ghanaians. Director of Communications at the IMF, Julie Kozak, disclosed this at a news conference in Washington, D.C., USA.
On October 4th, IMF staff and the Ghanaian authorities reached a staff-level agreement on economic policies and reforms for the third review of the ECF arrangement. Once the review is approved is completed by the IMF's executive board, Ghana would have access to about $360 million in terms of disbursement. We are working, our staff are working toward a board meeting in early December, and we'll provide additional details on the precise date when we have them. What I can say in addition is that program performance has been good. There has been, in particular, remarkable progress on debt restructuring. Economic growth in the first half of 2024 exceeded our expectations, exceeded our projections. Inflation has declined, and the fiscal and external positions have showed a marked improvement. Looking ahead, what will be important for Ghana will be continued implementation of the policy and reform agendas, especially given the difficult situation that many countries in the region and globally face. And it remains essential to fully restore macroeconomic stability and debt sustainability. And we will, of course, have further updates on Ghana when we release the staff report, when we publish the staff report after the board meeting takes place.
Now, let's get on Zoom and speak with financial economist Professor Lord Mensah on this development. Welcome, Prof.
Weston.
Great, Prof. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Great. Can we describe this as good news for the economy in terms of the IMF board meeting in December to approve the disbursement of some $360 million for Ghana's economy?
Of course, it is a good news. If you look at the economic situation we find ourselves in, obviously, any inflows that we expect that will not, stress up the economy, for which the payback is long-term, it is welcomed and is a good news for the economy. So from where I sit, I would say, yes, it is a good news.
Prof, let's look at the impact of this inflow on the city at a time that is posting some strong recovery. What signal does it send to the market, basically from where you sit?
Yeah, so it's going to send a short-term signal. Telling the market that, yes, obviously, there is an expectation of an IMF inflow of about 360 million. Of course, not in the long term. These are things that normally can keep, countries afloat. For which the countries within this period of enjoying these inflows may have to put in measures, as highlighted by the IMF, communicator. Clearly, we have to take advantage of the situation and ensure that, we put in measures to, leverage on this short-term inflows so we can maintain the currency in the long term. So obviously, it's going to send, a positive signal to the market, but basically on short-term basis.
Prof, the IMF has also been speaking about fund program, and that is the fact that the fund program has been on track. Basically, from the first quarter of 2024, we've seen some progress, especially based on economic growth. How could this impact on investor confidence going into the rest of the year and also possibly the first quarter of 2025?
Yeah, so the lens of a typical investor in looking at the Ghanaian economy will completely be different from what the IMF is looking at. IMF is looking at the macro level indicators. As they highlighted, the debt restructuring has gone well. They're talking about inflation sinking numerically, let me put it that way. And then also, fiscal and external, positions also improving. Clearly, these are things that we hold them at the macro level. But a typical investor be it a portfolio investor, be it foreign direct investment, they're going to look at the micro level. How funds flow within the economy, how individuals are able to go about their businesses, how money's move. But that's not where, we find ourselves as we speak now. So, the lenses are different. And clearly, investor listening to IMF would, wait for some time because, we may have to look at how the macro indicators trickle down to, the micro for a typical investor to take a decision.
What also do you make of concerns by the IMF that they see the election as a major threat to economic recovery, considering a lot of challenges that many election years has reflected so far?
Well, we live in a typical economy where we have winner takes all, economic structure and then political structure as well. So political risk is imminent in a sense that we are likely to change government possibly, or even if there's a continuation of, government, information flow across, governance is quite problematic when it comes to, countries like Ghana. So obviously, if they give us that kind of, possible risk as a result of changing government, then it could be that, the economy as packaged to IMF as we speak now could be different from the realities on the grounds, and therefore, any government that will take over is likely to face, the true picture of the economy. So, from where I sit, there's a political risk that needs to be highlighted on, and it's not only in Ghana alone. Every country goes through this political dynamics, and it is expected.
Prof, you mentioned risks when you were making this submission. I want to understand from your perspective as well about our debt management, how far our debt has risen. We've seen the losses based on the forex differentials that has the finance minister said is one of the key indicators reflecting in an increase in the jump. Going into next year, what is your assessment of our fiscal outlook?
Yeah, so from where I sit, I was expecting that being into the IMF program for the past, 1.5 to 2 years, we should have seen a kind of reorientation of our economy, for which, we can have more or less a structural, reforms to see more export or possibly reduction in importation to tame down, the foreign currency. That is the only advantage we can take from the debt restructuring, from the IMF inflows that we are having and all those. But that is not what I'm saying. And if we should look at our debt numbers, you're going to see that clearly it is a depreciation of the currency that is swelling up, the debt. And it tells you that we're not taking much advantage when it comes to the IMF program that we have.
We are going into a very tight election this year. Many have looked at the election as a decider of economic fate. First of all, key issue that has become quite prominent amongst the discussants, the aspirants, has to do with inflation. We saw the recent inflation figure. Next week, we are going to see the Monetary Policy Committee releasing the policy rate. What do you project?
Yeah, so you can see inflation has started, building up again. The last time I saw inflation numbers, we're talking about month-on-month, 33% thereabout. And clearly it tells you that, yes, the policy committee looking at the trend are likely to maintain, the policy rate or possibly increase, the policy rate, together with government being on the market looking for money every now and then through treasury bills. They cannot afford to bring, the policy rate down. If they do that, they may not attract the necessary funds that is supposed to be. So having these two, forces, putting them together, the policy committee is likely to maintain or possibly increase, the policy rate. And of course, it is not good for the supply side of the market, which has to do with, lending to individuals and businesses.
Bro, before I let go of you, any advice, irrespective of who comes to power after December 7th, especially on the outlook of the economy and what must be done to ensure from the fundamentals, economic-wise, that must be done to ensure citizens benefit and the issue of poverty is eradicated? Well,
I think we are on course looking at the IMF program we've hooked up to. if you look at the last budget we read, I mean, for the first time, we showed a signal of being conserved in terms of our budget deficit. We couldn't raise the budget deficit so huge to call for necessary financing here and there. And so the momentum that we've gathered within the IMF program, I am expecting whoever comes, to more or less continue in the same, momentum, and then possibly, revisit the IMF or negotiate on the IMF to look at some, release that can help us. Because for now, we're looking at a situation where interest rates can come down easily for, individuals and businesses to borrow from the banks, easily, so that they can expand and expand with people. We know government, payroll when it comes to employment is saturated, and the only means of re-energizing the economy, creating employment, is to make sure that cost of funds comes down, and then individuals and businesses can borrow at a lower rate and expand with labor.
Prof. Lord Mensah, we really appreciate your time here on the Business Live. Now, moving on, the Chief Executive of the Ghana Railway Development Authority, Yao Owusu, is calling on investors and businesses to take advantage of development in the railway sector to expand economic activities in other parts of the country. According to him, the movement of trains along the Tema-Mpakadan route and linking to the northern part of the country and Burkina Faso will attract movement of settlement and trade. He was speaking at a ceremony to launch the 2 diesel multiple unit trains on the Tema-Mpakadan railway line.
Project as part of an entire West African sub-regional route aimed at facilitating the movement of trade across the sub-region. The new standard gauge line from Tema is expected to support trading activities from the Tema port to the Eastern Corridor and subsequently to the neighboring countries. According to Chief Executive of the Ghana Railway Development Authority, Yao Owusu, the development calls for investors to pay attention to expand their business operations along the route.
One might ask, what are the other benefits to the immediate communities and the country as a whole? Traditionally, railway lines are built in anticipation of demographic and economic growth. I would therefore invite business communities to take advantage of this incredible and viable project. For example, real estate developers can build residential properties to decongest other parts of Greater Accra. Other business opportunities include, but not limited to, the construction of factories for manufacturing activities and bonded warehouse along the line to decongest the Tema port.
In his keynote address, President Akufo-Addo described the railway project as a game changer for the transport industry and the economy as a whole.
By reducing our reliance on road transport for long-distance freight and passenger movement, this railway line will address several critical challenges that have hindered Ghana's development. It will decongest significantly our roads, alleviating the heavy burden that has led to severe traffic congestion, the rapid deterioration of road infrastructure, and an alarming increase in road accidents. Furthermore, they will enhance the efficiency of port operations at Tema, minimizing vessel waiting times and container dwelling times, thereby boosting the competitiveness of our ports.
Meanwhile, passenger services are expected to commence on the line from next week.
Oil marketing firms have questioned the effectiveness of the Good for Oil program. This and more coming up after this break. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Business Live. Now to more news. Oil marketing firms have questioned the effectiveness of the Gold for Oil program. The initiative introduced by government was meant to stabilize prices at the pumps in the wake of soaring product prices on the world market. But the marketing firm says there is still a lot of work to be done on the program. Dr. Riverson Opon is the Chief Executive of the Association of Oil Marketing Companies.
The fact that now members of the BDCs know that there are delays from these 2 angles, so now they are important. So I'm sure that...
You're hopeful that the situation will improve?
Yep, sure.
Good for Oil program, you think it was a well-thought-through program?
It's working in other countries, so it can work here, if it's done well.
Is it not being done well?
I don't know.
Because it's been touted as one of the programs that has helped stabilize prices at the pumps. Okay. No, I'm just that's what we are being told. And so from your end, if that is not the situation, maybe you will help enlighten us and our viewers that, well, we don't think that the expectation is being met because there are still some teething implementation issues with it.
You know, it's not about the implementation per se. It's about how you run the program, okay? Because Ghana is not one of the countries that delay in implementing new policies. We are very fast at drafting excellent policies, implementing them, but making it work is always an issue. Like I said, the problem is always when we attach politics into a program that should be left to work. That's our problem.
Do you see
Research and Web3 company Heritage Labs, in collaboration with its funding partner, Reserve Fund, has launched the second edition of Africa Research and Innovation Commercialization Summit in Accra. The following report has more.
The summit is a gathering of Africa's leading researchers, innovators, and the private sector actors to prepare solutions that would move research outcomes from lab to market. Speaking to journalists at the media launch, General Manager of Heritage Labs, Emmanuel Prince Amati, said the focus is to connect industry and innovators across the continent for economic growth.
With ARIS 2025, we are bringing in a cross-section of stakeholders across Africa. We have widened our net. We are bringing participants from Kenya, from Nigeria, from South Africa. And we want to use this as what we are trying to do is plug into an Africa without border, where through innovation, through research, we are able to unleash the potential of Africa, bring industry, policymakers, researchers, innovators together, and want to use this year's program to highlight some of the great innovations that are happening across Africa, bringing out issues of research commercialization happening in Ghana and also in Africa.
ARIS 2025 is scheduled from March 13 to 14 on the theme From Labs to Market, Scaling Industry Uptake of Innovation and Research Outcomes. On her part, Ms. Barbara Edu, Development Project Lead at Heritage Labs, said ARIS 2025 will provide opportunity for collaboration.
I think that in order for us to drive forward in this ecosystem, we are calling on board partners, governments, entrepreneurs, business associations to come on board, partner with us, and even exhibit, because we feel that there are several, innovations and research in the system. But then if you don't have the opportunity to showcase what you have, you will never get an investor even keen to sponsor you. So we're really, really emphasizing on the importance of collaboration.
That's all for the Business Live today on the Journey News channel. My name is Winston Taki. We'll be back with Beyond the Numbers, where we'll be delving on the key economic issues that has been trending by all political aspirants as we go into the 2024 election. Stay tuned after this.